بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء إن اتقيتن فلا تخضعن بالقول فيطمع الذي في قلبه مرض وقلن قولا معروفا وقرن في بيوتكن ولا تبرجن تبرج الجاهلية الأولى صلوات بيجي محمد وعلى محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As you can see, I don't have a great deal of time to begin this majlis. We have about 25 minutes or so before Maghribain. So I will try to be as concise as possible. The verse that I recited is from Surah Ahzab, verse number 33 and 32 and 33, leading up to the verse of Ayat Atir. Basically, this ayat is discussing a select group of women known as the wives of Rasulullah. It says, Ya nisa an-nabi, lastunna ka'ahadim min an-nisa'i. O wives of the Prophet, you are not just an ordinary women now that you have become or Hamsar or the wife of the Prophet. In ittaqaytunna fala takhda'na bil qawl alladhi. And it says, do not be complacent in your speech, lest those in whose heart is sickness should aspire. Speak honorable words, stay within your houses, and do not flaunt your finery like the former days of Jahiliyyah. وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَا تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. We see that tonight, as we are commemorating the wafat of wife of Rasulullah, Hazrat Khadija, salamullahi alayha, this Muhsana Islam, as we speak about her there, it's either too easy or it's too hard to talk about her. Too easy in a sense because who doesn't know about the personality of Janab Khadija? Who doesn't know about the sacrifice that she made in the way of Islam? Today, if we are able to breathe Islam, if we're able to practice Islam, is due to the wealth Janab Khadija had provided to Rasulullah in the initial days when everyone had deprived Rasulullah. In fact, when Rasulullah wants to admit and testify in regards to Janab Khadija, after her death, long after her death, while among his other wives, he remembered her and he revered her. Whenever he would, talk of death would come about, he would remember her. And this is when some of the wives would become jealous and say, why do you remember that old wife of yours who's dead for so many years? This is where Prophet would remind why I remember her. She backed me when no one else supported me. She provided me when everybody else had deprived me. She stood by me when no one else was standing by me. This is how Prophet would remind people about the character of Janab Khadija salamullahi alayha. So this is where we see it's easy to talk about her because we know so much about her, and we know because of her today we're able to practice Islam the way we're able to do so. But at the same time, it is very difficult because of her exalted place and her honorable and dignified place that she has near Rasulullah as well as in the bargah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's just one example enough to elaborate on that point, is that whenever Jibreel would bring revelation to Rasulullah, he would ask Rasulullah, "Oh Rasul, I have one request from you." He would say, "What is your request?" He said, "Your Lord and I convey salam to Janab Khadija." Just imagine the extent of the height of the exalted place of Janab Khadija. This is where Allah and Jibreel are saying and conveying salam to Janab Khadija. This is where Janab Khadija would reply by saying, Inna Rabbi huwa salam, wa minhu salam, wa ilayhi salam. Indeed, my Lord is salam, from him is salam, and towards him is returning my salam. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we know from the very beginning, Janab Khadija, she was a businesswoman who had one of the biggest of the trades in Arabia at that time. And we can understand when a person has such possession, what kind of lifestyle would they have. So prior to marriage, I'm sure she had a very luxurious lifestyle where she had many servants serving her all around. She must have had, houses, or she must have had many properties that she used and utilized at that time. Having owned so many businesses at that time and had been biggest caravans which traveled from Syria back to Hijaz, definitely she would have been enjoying all of those favors that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to her. But as soon as she meets Rasulullah, this is where we see the immense love she had for Rasulullah, that she's able to give without any question asked all of her wealth in the possession of Rasulullah. Why? Well, it will be spent in the way of Islam. And this is where we see how if a person who comes from such a lavish lifestyle, not that I'm saying she had a very lavish lifestyle, but imagining the type of wealth that she had, she must have had enjoyed that sort of lifestyle. But when she comes into, being in the zawja of Rasulullah, obviously she's no longer in that lifestyle. But to the extent that the 3 years that she spent with Rasulullah in Shi'b Abi Talib, in a stage where the Muslims were deprived and pushed to the limits, that they did not have adequate amount of food, they did not have things to drink, they did not have shelter above their heads. In those situations, any ordinary individual will strand and leave you alone. But this is the character of Janab Khadija, coming from such lavish style of living, but at the same time, when they're pushed to the limit, when all Muslimin are pushed to the limit, there's no food, adequate amount of food, still she stays by Rasulullah. And this is basically became one of the reasons of her shahad, or of her wafat rather, that she died because of the troubles and the difficulties they faced while they were surviving in Shi'b Abi Talib. We see that Janab Khadija, as far as her character is concerned, a person by the name Rahmani Hamadani, in his book, which is called Fatimatu Zahra, Bahajatu Qalbi Mustafa, the Fatimatu Zahra, who's the center heart of Rasulullah, he quotes from Shafi'i, who said, once Prophet came home and heard Khadija speaking, while there was no one else in the house. This is Shafi'i quoting in this book that I gave you the reference of. And he said, I heard Khadija talking to someone. Well, there was no one else in the house. So I went up to her and he said, who are you talking to? And at that time she was pregnant with Janab Sayyida. She said, I'm speaking to the baby which is inside my womb. And in the times, O Rasulullah, that you're not with me or you're traveling, this baby who's inside my womb consoles my heart and gives me this company which cannot be replaced without your company. This is where Rasulullah replies to Janab Khadija by saying, the daughter that you are carrying in your womb will become mother of 11 anwar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one of them will be the imams of this ummah, and the last one of them will be Mahdi. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam says, Sadiqul Aqile. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, Sadiqul Aqile at-Ta'b. Sadiq means a friend. Aqil, the one who has intellect. At-Ta'b means difficulty. He said, difficulty and turmoil is the friend of the intellect. And he's referring towards Rasulullah over here as well. And every intellectual personality. Why? Because the intellectuals, when they are among the people, their level and their vision is far superior than the layman. And that's what Prophet was. His vision is far superior than anyone who existed at that time. So intellectuals, whenever their vision is so superior than other people who are unable to comprehend what they're thinking and what they're planning and what their vision is, they start mocking these individuals. They start making fun of you. And this is what Prophet went through in his life as well, when people could not understand or comprehend the message of Rasulullah, to the extent the ayat of Quran says, وَقَالُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِي نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الذِّكْرِ إِنَّكَ إِنَّكَ لَمَجْنُونَ. They said to Prophet, the one whom the reminder has been revealed, oh the crazy one, oh the one who's insane. They use the word majnoon to Rasulullah, reflecting back to that hadith of Amirul Mu'mineen, which says, Sadiqul aqil at-ta'ab. The friend of a person who's intellectual is this turmoil. Nobody could understood Rasulullah at that time. And this is the time, this is where we understand how Janab Khadija was able to understand Prophet completely. In that era of ignorance, when no one is able to comprehend what Prophet, the message he's delivering, but as soon as when Prophet comes home, he says, I have received the revelation from Allah that He has chosen me as the messenger and He has given me shariat. Janab Khadija did not turn around and say, for what proof do you have? Why are you saying such a thing? What is the dalil behind it? Rather, she was the first one to embrace by saying, I have already known that from long time ago. I knew this from before that you will be receiving such, because Abu Talib had already informed us at the time of the nikah when he recited that famous khutbah in which he was prophesying, saying, Prophet, it is someone, Muhammad is someone who will be receiving a great news from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat bhi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad par. But even when people were calling Prophet crazy and insane, look at, he is not known rahmatan lil alameen for no reason. This was the dua that Prophet was making. He said, Allahumma aghfir liqawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Oh Allah, forgive my qawm because they do not understand. They do not have the proper knowledge. And that is the reason they're calling me majnoon. And that is the reason they're calling me whatever the names that they have associated with me. Prophet was sent among such ignorant people that only person who was able to understand was Janab Khadija. We see that Mufassirin has actually dedicated or talked about the possible verses which are referring towards Janab Khadija. She reaches a status where even Quran is talking about her. We refer to her Surah Al-Duha. We say, وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا. Ibn Abbas says, the ayah which says, وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا Fahada, that, O Prophet, we found you wandering about. He said, وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا عَنِ النُّبُوَّةِ, because you were lacking nubuwwat, and when we granted you nubuwwat, Fahada, you had found the path. And when it says, وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى بِخَدِيجَةٍ, when he said, we fulfilled, we made you sufficient, we made you rich, and when we found you poor, how do we do this? We did it through Janab Khadija salamullahi alayha. We see that, but because she was the most important support for the Prophet from the wealth point of view, from the financial point of view, sometimes we fail to understand that she was also one of the most important of her backers or the supporters from the psychological point of view as well. Imagine having such criticism in front of you, so many people criticizing you, calling you different names, but yet still having the same firm belief. Obviously, Prophet is Rasulullah. At the same time, he also has this heart which needs to be consoled. And Janab Khadija that played that role which was consoling the heart of Rasulullah in the most difficult of the time. Salawat bhi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad par. If we say that Khadija was among the best of the wives of the Prophet, Ashrafuz Zawjat al-Rasul, it would be actually inappropriate. You would say, why? It would be inappropriate to even count her among the list of those women who became later on the wives of Rasulullah. First of all, going back to the ayat that I had recited, as I'm looking at the time, things that I wanted to talk about and skipping through, that one of the reasons that Prophet took so many wives, and a lot of people look at it from the negative aspect, even the Westerners, they have criticized the character of Rasulullah, saying that he took so many wives. We need to understand and tell them that a person, when his carnal urges are at its peak, is when he's young. This is where Prophet marries a woman. To some riwayat, possibly she was older. If not too much older, she was still older than him. And then he remained married to her for 25 years of her life, until she died. And this was the love that they had with each other. And that is with Janab Khadija. And then only after her death, and couple of years after her death, when Prophet settles down in Medina, this is where he started taking other wives. And we understand that at this old age, if you want to call that to be a very, because obviously, he's in his late 50s at that moment. At that age, he does not really have those if he ever had those carnal desires. But still, who is he marrying? He's marrying those old women who have been divorced. So this tells you that these marriages of Rasulullah had another purpose behind it. Primary reason behind, if you look at some of the wives of Rasulullah, for example, he married the daughter of Abu Sufyan. He married the daughter of the first Khalifa, the second Khalifa. One of the reasons behind these marriages is when you become damad or son-in-law of a certain clan. These people themselves were not just individuals, rather they were representatives of their own tribes. And when you become damad or son-in-law of these tribes, what happens? The whole tribe is with you. So some of these marriages were actually performed, and majority of these marriages were actually performed for the sake of providing shelter to some of these widows, and secondly for the sake of spreading Islam, because by becoming the son-in-law of this tribe, now you have the whole tribe who's following you. And this was the only way Prophet could bring some of these tribes towards the following. So this is one of the reasons why Prophet went ahead and took so many wives. That is when he's so old, but when he's young, he only married one person, and that is Janab Khadija. And he did not take another wife until she died and she left this world. So over here, what I was trying to explain, that when Prophet we compare Janab Khadija to the other wives, it would not be appropriate. Why? Nor would it translate her exalted status. Although, there were people such as Salma who were also of great statuses among the other wives of Rasulullah. But they were all like servants to Janab Khadija. And why are you comparing Khadija with other wives? Khadija is someone, as I said before, to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending His salam through Jibreel. No other women in the world had this status, let alone among the wives of Rasulullah. Jibreel comes down and says, "Oh Rasulullah, I have a request. Can you convey my salam to your wife Khadija?" This is where Khadija replies back to the salam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is one reason. Second, khitab to Imam of our time. It says, "Yabna Khadijat al-Ghurra." When Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, he's taking pride in being son of Janab Khadija. And then we look at the Ziyarat Ashura of Imam Hussein, and before in the events of Karbala, Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, when he's introducing to these kuffar his status, that who he is, he said, I'm the son of Ali, I'm the son of Fatima. And then he says this, Ana ibnul Khadijatul Kubra, I'm son of Khadijatul Kubra. This is the status of Khadijatul Kubra, that Hussein is taking pride in calling her to be her son. And then we see that she's not just Ummul Mu'mineen, she's Ummu Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen. She's the mother of Sayyidat Nisa'il Alameen, the one who's the leader of the women of the universe, not just in this life, but even in the hereafter. She's the mother of such lady, Janab Fatmatul Zahra. And then we see that she also is the mother of Ummul A'imma, that all of the A'immatul Ma'asumeen. She at the same time is Kafilatu Amirul Mu'mineen. Who did the kifalat of Amirul Mu'mineen? Who took care of Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, while he was very young? At the age of 6, Prophet brings Ali ibn Abi Talib to his house. Janab Khadija is the one who's taking care of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So she is the one who's taking care of Ali. She is the one who's taking care of Sayyidatul Nisa'il Alameen. Do not compare her with other Ummahatul Mu'mineen. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa. This is where we see what kind of tarbiyat. Yes, these people had immense amount of knowledge themselves, but still there was tarbiyat of Khadija involved when upbringing Ali ibn Abi Talib, when upbringing Janab Fatmatul Zahra. We see the tarbiyat, and this is where we want to transfer some of this and ask our own selves, the women of our society, that how big a role women play when it comes to the tarbiyat of the children. We see these kids when they come in the gathering, when they are among ourselves, especially in these days and these nights when large number of people gather in this masjid, in this Imam Bark or other places. When people are coming in, this is where we come to see the tarbiyat of awlad. If you see the children sitting with their parents and listening and focus, and you do not see disturbances, this is where you see that actually reflects towards the tarbiyat tarbiyat that the parents have done towards these kids. Same comes to when they are outside of a majlis, but while still in the premises of masajid, is still in the premises of the house of Allah. This is where the tarbiyat of awlad comes into play and shows how the tarbiyat of these children is done. So we need to learn from the teaching of Janab Khadija as to how she performed this tarbiyat. I want to bring you towards the end of the majlis where we see that so many years have passed. Is still, if we look at the grave of Janab Khadija, yes, she died in this mazlumiyat, but the grave of Janab Khadija and the grave of other Aimma, which is in Jannatul Baqi, it is said that you keep on asking for it, and there will come a day, even if you do not accomplish what you're asking for, you will at least accomplish somewhat. And so we ask again that the grave of Janab Khadija and the grave of these revered individuals in the society, how they are not being taken care of properly. This is actually a calamity. This is a musibat on musibat of these individuals themselves. اس حوالے سے آپ دیکھیے کہ جناب خدیجہ کہ جب رسول اللہ آتے ہیں اور جناب خدیجہ اپنے وقت احتضار سے گزر رہی ہیں، آخری لمحات ہیں زندگی کے، اور بس یہ جان سے نکلنے والی ہے، اس بدن سے جان نکلنے والی ہے، ان حالات میں جناب خدیجہ کیا کہتی ہیں کہ میری دختر میری بیٹی کو کمرے سے باہر لے جایا جائے، 5 سال کی بیٹی ہے، کہا اس کو کمرے سے باہر لے جایا جائے، میں نہیں چاہتی کہ وہ یہ منظر دیکھے کہ اس کی ماں اس دنیا سے گزر رہی ہو۔ ارے کتنی مصیبت کا منظر ہوگا کہ کوئی بیٹی اس طریقے سے ماں کو جان دیتے ہوئے دیکھے۔ آپ دیکھیں جناب فاطمہ جناب زہرا کی عمر 5 سال کی ہوگی، اس وقت جناب خدیجہ کیا گزارش کرتی ہیں، اپنی بیٹی سے ایک گزارش کرتے ہوئے نظر آتی ہیں کہ اے بیٹی اپنے بابا سے کہنا، میری التجا ہے، میری التماس ہے کہ مجھ کو کفن دیں تو اپنے لباس کا کفن دیں۔ آپ دیکھیے کیا التجا ہے جناب خدیجہ کی، خود رسول اللہ سے کہتے ہوئے شرما رہی ہیں، لیکن بیٹی کو واسطہ بناتے ہوئے کہتی ہیں کہ کہنا لباس دیں تو مجھ کو اپنے لباس کا کفن دیں۔ یہ ہے محبت کا تقاضا۔ ارے کہاں یوسف اور زلیخا کی کہانی، کہاں خدیجہ اور رسول اللہ کی کہانی۔ خدیجہ حتیٰ وفات کے بعد بھی چاہتی ہیں کہ رسول کا پیراہن ان کے ساتھ قبر میں جائے تاکہ وفات کے بعد بھی رسول کی خوشبو کو استشمام کر سکیں۔ کہا بیٹی کو باہر لے جایا جائے، میں نہیں چاہتی کہ وہ یہ مناظر دیکھے۔ باہر لے جایا جاتا ہے، آخری لمحات ہیں، خدیجہ اس جہاں سے گزر جاتی ہیں، رسول اللہ جسد خدیجہ کو دفنا دیتے ہیں، کیونکہ خود نے وصیت کی تھی کہ آپ ہی کفن دیجیے گا، آپ ہی دفنائیے گا۔ ایک دفعہ غم و آلام میں رسول اللہ دفنا کر گھر لوٹتے ہیں، رسول کے کندھوں پہ کتنی مصیبتیں ہیں، کتنے آلام ٹوٹ گئے، کتنے غم اور اندوہ جمع ہو گئے۔ ان آلام کے لے کر جب گھر میں داخل ہوتے ہیں، گھر کی تاریکی میں ایک 5 سالہ بچی کو پاتے ہیں۔ وہ بچی آتی ہے، ماں کو نہ پایا گھر میں، باپ کے پاس آتی ہے، آنکھوں سے آنسو جاری ہیں۔ باپ کے پیراہن کو تکان دیا، ہلا کے پوچھا اینا امی، اے بابا میری والدہ ماجدہ کہاں ہے؟ ارے یہ باپ جو خود اتنی مشکلات سے اپنی زوجہ کو دفنا کے آیا ہے، بیٹی کو کیا جواب دے گا؟ خاتم الانبیاء ہے، سید الانبیاء ہے، لیکن 5 سالہ بیٹی کا جواب نہیں ہے۔ اس وقت جبرائیل نازل ہوتے ہیں، کہتے ہیں اے رسول تمہاری کمک کے لیے آیا ہوں، ارے زہرا کو کہہ دو خدا نے سلام بھیجا ہے اور کہا ہے کہ اے زہرا پریشان نہ ہونا، خدیجہ کے لیے ہم نے محل تیار کیا یاقوت کا، خدیجہ آرام سے ہیں۔ یہ سننا تھا کہ جناب زہرا حضرت زہرا کو سکون آیا۔ الا لعنت اللہ القوم الظالمین وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.